have a few more costume pieces for you guys to look at. And the whole background to this is to make sure that I have enough stuff to do for next year for my students. I have some money. I created this new Fab Lab for my high school, and they got sewing machines. So I'm trying to have at least 3 or 4 new projects for grade 7 and 8. So this is geared towards 13 to 16-year-olds, and they'll love it. A lot of our girls do girls productions and dance shows, so I'm really hoping they get into and obviously costuming, like for Halloween and such. So I'm really hoping that they'll get into some of these costume pieces. The background to this is I know through their English classes they do Shakespeare. So I wanted to see if I could come up with a few costume pieces, hats specifically, that'll be in the style that actors would wear in a Shakespearean play. So I'm trying to have a little tiny, cross-curricular, not have these just random pieces, and sort of show them what, say, costume designers have to do for the theater, considering that's my number one background. So I have 2 different hats, one on my little mannequin right here. It's sort of like a traditional flat cap that you'd see in period England, type idea. And this one has a brim. So it does have a piece of cardboard all the way around, and which will keep it stiff. This is made out of an old jacket, actually. It's corduroy and really nice and stiff, very easy to sew. So I was keeping that in mind. But it's completely recycled too. So I took apart an old jacket that I had. Unfortunately, jackets don't have a lot of material, but I did have just enough to put together a hat. This one is just repurposed material that I found. I actually got a whole bunch of box of material donated from a parent. This one just has a brim around, or a band around the head. There's no brim on this one. I found creating the brim was not as hard as I thought it was going to be, but it's still an extra step. This one actually has a lining to it, so I'll explain that as I put together a few things. The easy part of these hats is it's really only one pattern for the round, and the backing right here has the hole for your head, but it's exactly the same pattern as the top, right? So my paper pattern will look exactly like this, just a donut. Okay, so you could use this for the top and the bottom. Just the bottom has the cutout of the circle. So the idea is the hole is the opening of the circumference of your head. So take a flexible tape measure or a piece of string, measure out what the circumference is, and put that dead center in the middle of your round paper. The diameter of the big circle is what you wanted. I based this on a beret that I had, and sort of seen, okay, berets are quite small. I want this one to be a little bit bigger, a little bit floppier. So I came up with, I think it's about 22 inches. Sorry, not 22 inches. Probably about 12 inches in diameter or so. But you could play with that dimension. No issues whatsoever. And then in between, you need a very long piece of fabric that acts as the band for the bottom, okay, of the opening. So this goes on your head such as this, goes off to the side, and then I was thinking of putting, say, a button or a feather on this side, so it's a little bit more decorative. So there's that. So I have the pieces already cut out for you. I'll go get them. So The brim and the top of the hat look exactly the same. So they fit inside each other. So I'm going to do a little bit of sewing right now. I pre-cut them and pre-pin them for you. And a couple of tips. When you are, I had to do this 2 or 3 times because I kept on making the opening too small. The thickness of the fabric will make the opening a little bit smaller. So the band that I'm going to have to put around, okay, the seam allowance will make the opening a little bigger, but I'm going to double it and fold it down like this, okay, from the top view. So the thickness of the fabric will take away, it's still, it might be, 2 or 3 millimeters or a quarter of an inch, but a quarter of an inch will make a big difference in terms of this, the circumference of the opening. There might be a little bit of trial and error there, okay? So I would go on the assumption of making it a little bit bigger. Go on the side of bigger because you'll just be able to sew it or pin it in the back to fit your actor or actress afterwards. It's a nightmare if it's way too small. You'll have to start from scratch. So go for the side of bigger, and you'll have an easier time that way. Okay? So I'm just sewing up the circumference and the outside edge of the back of the top of the hat. Backstitch. So as simple as that. Always have your scissors handy. So now the tricky part is to keep track of good side and bad side of your fabrics. So when you're putting on the band, you need to be pinning the good side of the hat. So that means you take this, you unpin. I'm going to try doing this in real time. I might speed up the video a little bit, so you might have to follow along. But that's not a big deal. So, take this band. The length of this band is completely estimated. Okay, I've tried to measure a couple of times before, ended up short, so I just cut way longer than you need, and just snip off on the end. So this particular hat will have a brim, but I didn't put any cardboard in it, just because I wanted to make it as easy as possible. The cardboard was an added difficulty to this hat. So if this is going to be like a beginning project for a bunch of 12-year-olds that have never sewed before, I didn't want to overwhelm them with details. But that being said, I'm using felt that is quite stiff, and I'm hoping it'll keep its shape. So good side edge. So this band will be this part right here, okay? So even if you have a brim to your hat, you still need a bit of a band, okay? And you could play with how wide you want your band to be, okay? Normally if there's a brim, it's not very wide at all, maybe a ½ inch. This particular one, I'm trying, it's supposed to be the style, I guess you could say. So I made it quite a bit wider because that's supposed to be on your forehead, and some accessories they'll be sewed on or glued on, like feathers and buttons and such. So when you're ready for the band and you've completely flipped this in right side in, I guess, you need to sew the band, as you can see in my top view, be good side to good side. Okay. So when you're ready, when you've pinned it and sewed it, you flip it down so you're not going to see a seam. So you're going to pin the whole entire thing. So this is what I'm going to do. I have everything pinned and ready to go for the rim. I think I'm going to start right here on the edge because this will be a seam, and I think I'm going to leave that for the end. I'm going to pivot and go straight down and end there because that's all, the direction of all my pins. So here I go. Turn it inside out, or inside in, or right side out. And you have the brim of that. So the next step is to, you can see on my top here, fold it back as much as you can, all the way to the seam. You can probably get it down as much as you can right about here, and you'll go through it all again, and fold back and hem it, and it'll make a nice seam like this. Okay, so I'll just start from the top right here, the seam. And I will do just a quick stitch all the way around. Okay, for the brim, which is the hard part. So I have my two pieces of material felt pinned together with the opening traced out. So I'm going to sew these two together on the edge. So super fast, stitch around the circle, and then turn it inside out. So now we have to flip this inside out or right side in, depending on your point of view. And sorry, to make sure it's the right size, right side for the brim. So unpin this real fast. And now we got to make a hole in the opening, so you're able to do that. So your head is going to be sitting through here. So I would just start off with one cut. To the line. And then flip this inside out, or right side in. So it's good side out with a seam. So if you do this nicely, nice and big donut. So because you can't see your circle anymore though, I invite you to grab your pattern and grab a marker and do your best to find the center again. So I know I cut right until the edge. So you can put this down and then trace out the circle again. Obviously you don't have to use a Sharpie, you use something else, maybe chalk, because chalk does go away. But you need to know how big your hole needs to be. So put that aside. So when you are putting this out, push your seams all the way to the edge. You can maybe even get an iron out and iron down your seam. But what you can do is I'm going to put this through the sewing machine now and then cut it out because you need that edge to make sure that you're not going to cut too far. And I am going to sew it right on the line, maybe a little tiny bit on the outside of the line, just to make sure that it doesn't end up being too small for your other hat. Perfect. So I have my borders now. Okay, and you could, on your own time, get an iron out and make sure your seam is open, because I've noticed that it's not perfectly flat down everything. But now, cut until right before your seam to open up the brim. So just go to a couple of points, pizza, halves, and then quarters. maybe more, but that's not bad. Right. The more you cut, I wouldn't cut too much, but the more flexible the corners will be, because it is a circle. And now, so give yourself at least a ½ inch on the outside edge, because you're going to be sewing to this edge. So I hope this brim fits my hat. So you can even try it on. Yeah, it's pretty good. I have a feeling this hat is going to be a little bit big for the inside of this brim. But let's give it a try. So this is the tricky part of the sewing. You're going to have to take this part of your sewing machine off and sort of sew it on an edge so you can go through the circle of the hat. But it is kind of fun to be able to do it this way, because you need to put the needle right here. So this is the tricky part. But I'm going to pin it a couple of times just so it doesn't slip on me. So I'm using the brim right here, as you can see, and I'm going to put it over the seam, over the stitch of the brim on the outside of the brim that I just did. Just tack it down a couple of times to make sure that it doesn't slip on me. And that I'm actually sewing into something. Okay, now the tricky part of the sewing is to get it underneath your, I would say brim out, or in, I should say, towards the machine. And keep track of where you started. So the fun part is you do have to hang your sewing machine off the edge so you could make sure the circumference of the hat goes around, and it almost does by doing it this way. So a little bit fun. So matching two circumferences like that, the top of the hat and the brim, definitely the challenge of this project. But with a little bit of fabric can be very, very flexible. And especially if you're doing costume that is done for, say, theater or movies, there's a lot of play that you can. When your audience is 50 feet away, your costume can have flaws, and they will not notice anything. It's amazing what you can cover up with decoration and such. So, let's see. Let's get some pins off. And you have a Shakespearean style hat. So I'll get the mannequin out here and see what it looks like on the head. Get all your stray threads. See if you can up a little bit. Iron obviously can help determine what the front and back might be. Okay. This is actually quite large. Not so bad for a head that big. You could actually put a band on the inside, actually, to make it a little bit smaller, and to adjust to your actor's head. And I thought of doing something like a feather on one side with a button, and to get some, something like that. So lots of possibilities in terms of costuming. And I was actually thinking of some sort of accent band right around, is to cover up some of the stitches, and make it a little bit prettier, or to clean up the edges a little bit. But I'm glad that the brim itself doesn't need the cardboard. It's actually quite stiff, and with an iron, it'll stiffen up even more, and to be quite solid. So thank you very, very much. Welcome to my new Fab Lab, and I really hope you enjoy these costumes that you can share with your students. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I will definitely see you next time.